Chapter 278. Testing again. Moreover, Dao Yi and Zhao Wuji's battle records in the battlefield of the righteous devil were so impressive that they had already made it onto the Devil Path's immortal punishment list. The immortal execution list mainly recorded some disciples of the righteous Dao who had great potential, or some people who were very threatening to the Devil Dao, and any righteous Dao cultivator who made it onto this list was an object that the strongest people of the Devil Dao were bound to kill. Similarly, the Devil Dao had the immortal execution list, and the righteous Dao also had the devil execution list. Both the righteous and the devilish sides wanted to kill those who were a threat to their side, which was normal in the cultivation world. The fact that Dao Yi and Zhao Wuji had broken into the immortal execution list so quickly was enough to show their potential. Even in the cultivation world, they had a small reputation compared to Dao Yi and Zhao Wuji. Wuxia and Easy, who were in the top 3 of the subterranean dragon ranking at the time, were a bit worse. Of course, this was comparing the two perverts, Dao Yi and Zhao Wuji. In reality, Wuxia, who possessed the fire spirit body, and Easy, who possessed the wind spirit body, both of them were not small in terms of achievements now, and both of them were already at the peak of the 9th level of the ushering stage, with a breakthrough to the outbreeding stage just around the corner. In addition, there was also a dark horse, and that was Lei Yun. At first, Lei Yun's ranking in the demon locking tower wasn't very outstanding, but over the years, he had progressed very quickly. He had already caught up with the two of Wuxia prowess, and his natural thunder body talent had shocked everyone. However, Kang Tian learnt that Lei Yun had entered the heavenly Dao mystic realm a year ago and had yet to come out. Of course, there were some who had raced ahead, and there were others who had fallen in disgrace. Kang Tian learnt that the blade and sword duo Ji, who had been very popular in the Great Tang country at the beginning, had died 2 years ago in the orthodox battlefield, decapitated by a heavenly pride of the Devil's Way. Kang Tian sighed in his heart, although he didn't have a good feeling towards these two people. But when he saw a genius of his own generation fall, he couldn't help but feel some sighs in his heart. This cultivation world was full of crises everywhere. Even geniuses were just weaklings until they grew up. Kang Tian was always vigilant in his heart for this, not being arrogant or impatient, and cultivating hard. In addition to the fall of the blade and sword double Jedi, Kang Tian also learnt that his underling, that Wu Gang, who was known as the hegemonic warrior in the Great Tang Kingdom, had also suffered a heavy blow in the battlefield of righteousness and demons. However, Wu Gang's luck was better, as he spared the cost of a broken arm and escaped the pursuit of the demonic powerhouses. Later, he felt disheartened and returned to the Dotong Kingdom to start a family. Although some of the geniuses ended badly, what made Kang Tian relieved was that those who were on good terms with him were all still good. Jin San Xiao, Liu Sui Feng, Huo Yong, and Zhao Linga were also in the battlefield of the righteous devil. And although they didn't have any fame, they hadn't suffered any harm either, and were still diligently working hard on their cultivation. On the contrary, to Kang Tian's surprise, Li Chongzhou and Li Yuanba had already returned to the Great Tang Kingdom and had not been to the orthodox battlefield so far. Kang Tian was puzzled by this in his heart. These two guys were his enemies, especially that Li Chongzhou, who even possessed the star-absorbing technique. This matter was always in his mind, and he was very wary of this person. He specially inquired about Li Chongzhou detail, and found out that this guy returned to the Great Tang country when he was traveling to the spirit sealing space, and had not returned so far. Kid, it's just as well that you went back this time to settle this fellow together. Old me always had a bad feeling. If that close friend of mine is still alive, he would definitely be a great danger to the cultivation world in the future. Emperor Dan's voice suddenly came out, causing Kang Tian's heart to flinch. The close friend that Emperor Dan was talking about was the one who had cultivated the star-absorbing technique and had gone off the deep end. The previous guardian elder of the Heavenly Tao sect, Chon Xingzi. To be able to sit in the position of guardian elder of the Heavenly Tao sect, Chon Xingzi's strength could be imagined. And coupled with the threat that was the star-absorbing grand technique, it was no wonder that Emperor Dan was so scornful. Returning from Chenju Peak, Kang Chon went to the contribution hall. Using the 4,500 contribution points he had left to exchange for some spirit stones and pills for cultivation, he had now comprehended will, and as long as his cultivation was sufficient, he would be able to break through to the out-of-body stage. It could be said that since cultivation, the realm of the out-of-body stage was instead the realm he could break through the fastest. In the realm of cultivation, the problem that plagues many Yuanying stage cultivators who are unable to break through to the out-of-body stage is will. A Yuanying stage cultivator, before comprehending the will, it is impossible to break through to the out-of-body stage. For Kang Chon, who had already comprehended the will, this problem was completely hypothetical. As long as he raised his cultivation to the peak of the 9th level of the Yuanying stage, he could immediately break through to the out-of-body stage. In the cultivation world, it was known that realms were the most difficult and cultivation was the easiest. Why do you say that? Because realm breakthroughs require enlightenment, and without it, you could remain stagnant for the rest of your life. Whereas cultivation only requires enough time and enough resources, sooner or later you will reach it. Kang Chon now had enough realm, only lacking in cultivation. So he needed some spirit stones and pills to raise his cultivation, which would allow him to increase his cultivation faster. Of course, if one didn't have enough realm and forcefully increase their cultivation, then they would only let themselves go off the deep end. The contribution hall was a good place. As long as you had enough contribution points, you could exchange them for anything you wanted. Kang Chon exchanged more than 100 top-quality spirit stones and some cultivation-enhancing pills in one breath this time, and only after spending all of his contribution points did he reluctantly leave the Hall of Contributions. Now I'm penniless. Looking at the zero identity card, Kang Chon couldn't help but smile bitterly. The contribution points rewarded for breaking into the demon locking tower were all used up this time, and he could only rely on himself to earn them in the future. Kid, who told you to refuse to let the old man to refine pills for you? Otherwise those contribution points, as long as they are exchanged for some alchemy materials and refined by the old man for you, the pills obtained will be even more. Emperor Dan laughed and cursed. Before entering the Hall of Contributions, Emperor Dan had asked Kang Chon to exchange for some more alchemy materials, and then he would refine the pills. As a hallowed Dan Emperor, a generation of Dan Dao patriarchs, his refined pills would definitely be much better than the ones distributed in the Hall of Contributions, and there would also be a lot more of them. However, Kang Chon appeared strange this time. He didn't listen to the Dan Emperor's words to exchange for alchemy materials, but rather, he directly exchanged for pills. To this, Kang Chon's explanation was that cultivators ultimately relied on themselves, and he didn't want to rely too much on the Dan Emperor. After all, there would always be a day when the Dan Emperor would leave him. Who else could he rely on then? Therefore, right now, as long as it wasn't something important, Kang Chon didn't want to rely too much on the Dan Emperor. Like breaking through the out-of-body stage, he wasn't in a hurry, so there was no need to let the Dan Emperor help him refining pills at all. Not to mention that the Dan Emperor also needed to cultivate, or else he would lose a lot of strength in the future, even if he cultivated into a loose immortal. Kid, you've grown up. Emperor Dan understood Kang Chon's meaning and said with a face full of relief, grown up. Kang Chon had indeed grown up. He was no longer the brat he was when he first met Emperor Dan, but rather an inner disciple of the Heavenly Tao sect. In the blink of an eye, he was now in his 30s. Although because of his enhanced cultivation, the years hadn't left traces on Kang Chon's face, and his appearance still looked young. However, his deep eyes and the calm aura that unintentionally emanated from his body showed that he had matured immensely, and was no longer a young white man who had just stepped into the cultivation realm. Next, it's time to make a trip to the Power One Hall to see what my current strength is. A confident light appeared in Kang Chon's eyes. Invincible at the yuanying stage, he had this confidence. But exactly how much? He still needed the forced one stone to verify. Emperor Dan was also very curious about this. He smiled and said, "I guess it's 40 times. After all, not only the bloodline amplitude of Kang Chon's overbearing blood, but your physical body has already reached the level of a treasure weapon. Let's give it a try then." Kang Chon finished speaking and headed to the Power One Hall. In Dark Gold Peak, apart from the Contribution Hall, the Hall of Force Juan was the most lively place, and there would often be law enforcement disciples testing their strength here, so there would be a lot of people here every day. When Kang Chon arrived at the Force Juan Hall, a young man with robes like snow was testing. "Hey, it's him." Kang Chon was surprised. He recognized this person. It was that Zhu Wuin who had already been accepted as a disciple by Elder Li. "Brother, it's that guy. Back then he tested 30 times. This time you will definitely surpass him." Xiao Jin, who was beside him, had also heard about what Kang Chon encountered when he first came to the test, so at this moment, he said with a bad smile on his face, "Zhu Wuin used to be a genius on the Dark Gold Peak, second only to Kang Chon's 3 senior brothers, and was also the law enforcement elder's named disciple. He had always dreamed of becoming the law enforcement elder's personal disciple, but unfortunately, the law enforcement elder did not accept him. It was only later that Kang Chon was exceptionally accepted by the elder of law enforcement as a personal disciple, which caused Zhu Wuin to be very unhappy and secretly hated Kang Chon very much. If not for the fact that Kang Chon was only at the Jiden stage in the beginning, he was afraid that he would have directly challenged Kang Chon. It's Kang Tian. Kang Tian has also come to test. I wonder what he will achieve this time, as he has just broken through the yuanying stage. Suddenly, a cry of alarm came from amongst the crowd. Clearly someone had spotted Kang Chon. In fact, Kang Chon didn't hide his figure this time, because his great name had already spread all over Dark Gold Peak, and the law enforcement disciples on Dark Gold Peak all knew him, so he was recognized as soon as he came this time. Kang Chon, you're also here to test, right? Wait, to be honest, old man is very much looking forward to it. Elder Li was watching his favorite disciple test. When he suddenly saw Kang Chon arrive, he immediately said with a smile on his face, "Greetings, Elder Li." Kang Chon was still very favorably disposed towards this Elder Li, who was full of kindness, and immediately greeted him along with Little Gold, after which they stood beside Elder Li and watched the Zhu Wuin test together. It's him. In front of the forced one stone, Zhu Wuin naturally heard the exclamations of the crowd around him, and his eyes instantly shrunk when he caught sight of Kang Chon's figure. Originally, he was a bit spirited, but when he saw that Kang Chon had also come to the test, his face instantly sank. HMPH, only just breaking through the yuanying stage. Even if his talent is strong, it won't be much stronger. Zhu Wuin coldly glanced at Kang Chon, then carefully adjusted his breathing, adjusting his essence to its peak state. He wanted to test out a good score to show Kang Chon. He wanted to let Kang Chon know that the current him was not something Kang Chon could surpass, at least for now. Kang Chon looked at Zhu Wuin indifferently. He didn't know about what was going on in his mind. Of course, even if he knew, he didn't care, because since the beginning, he hadn't considered Zhu Wuin as an opponent. Wuin has grown a lot in these 3 years, thanks to you. Elder Li on the side smiled and transmitted his voice. Kang Chon looked at him with some doubt at his words. What did it have to do with him? He didn't remember having anything to do with Zhu Wuin. However, he immediately understood the reason. Elderly continued, back then, your 50 times achievement had hit him hard enough. But it also motivated him, causing him to cultivate very hard these past 3 years. Kang Qian was a bit speechless when he heard this. He didn't think that Zhu Wusheng secretly wanted to compete with him, to be honest. He didn't take Zhu Wusheng as a rival. The other party had a good talent, but it was far worse than a special bloodline possessor. And he Kang Qian in the special bloodline owners is also the top of the existence, whereas Zhu Wu Trace can be compared. It's Xiao Jin, give him more time, can surpass Zhu Wuin. The cultivation world is like this. There is no absolute fairness. People with special bloodline are born geniuses. You can't change this fact even if you are not happy about it. Of course, if you have a strong natural bloodline and do not work hard, the final achievement of strong also limited.